So I just finished a very short one, the death of Ivan Ilyich, or is it Ilyich? I don't know. Anyways, he's dead. It's a super short one. Like a novella doesn't even seem like the proper name for it. Anyways, so with this guy, it starts out with this guy dying. Like spoilers, the guy dies, and like it takes place in the second half of the 19th century in Russia. And this guy's dead, and all of his like friends and colleagues and comrades, we see their immediate reaction, and it's not, "Oh no, he died." It's, "Oh, well, who's gonna get his job next? Oh well, if he's next in line to get his job, then maybe he'll get promoted. Then maybe I'll get shifted to that department." And it's all these people thinking about how the death will affect them or even benefit them. Um, and to me, it felt like kind of like I thought it was going to be a comedy, like this first chapter, and then it's the people not really dreading going to his funeral or like, but they're not. There's no compassion or sorrow there. It's, well, I guess I got to go to the house now to go to the funeral because, well, he's dead. It feels like it's something that they have to do, but not that they want to do or enjoy doing. So, like, it feels like no one's really close to this guy, this Ivan guy, and like even his wife at the funeral asks one of his colleagues, Pyotr, like, "Hey, so government pension? How can you hook me up in terms of money?" And it just all these things are happening uh, after this guy died, and I guess in perspective now, having finished the book, um, I guess that kind of shows us that life goes on after you die, and like once your story's ended, there's no coda, no epilogue. It's just everyone else has their own story, and they just see how this affects them and what they can get out of it. That's what I took from it, which is pretty cynical, but that's just the first part. So that's sort of the introduction to the book, and then the rest of the book, the bulk of the book, is the story of Ivan Ilyich's his life. Um, and he seems to have had a great life. He sort of had it goes through his youth and his education and his start of his career, and he did everything that was expected of him. He followed society's rules. He was very good at his job and did his job correctly and managed to sort of move himself up in the world, and he met this girl, and it wasn't that he was in love with her, but it wasn't that he wasn't. He was just felt like, well, I suppose I should marry her, and so he did marry her, and he felt good about that because it was expected of him to marry her, and so on. And so he just sort of does what society expects of him, and does quite well for himself financially, socially, but the troubles start to come with him and his wife, and they argue a whole bunch. And at one point, he can't really make ends meet. He's not making enough money, so he goes sort of not on vacation, but he goes and lives with his brother-in-law, and he can't stand his wife, and he goes back into the city, and he's like, I gotta find a job. I need a job, and he does. He gets this job that's like gonna make so much more money, and it's sort of everything he hoped for and everything his wife hoped for. So he gets this big house, and he's decorating it, and he's like sparing no expense, and he's really living that upper class life now. And while he's decorating, he sort of falls and hits his side, but it doesn't seem like a big deal at first, but eventually it causes him more and more pain, and as the story goes on, this becomes the source of what eventually kills him, whatever it is. But yeah, so he sort of did everything right in life, but he sort of kind of hates his family, or he just feels awful or miserable when he's around his family. So he devotes himself fully to his work, and he feels really good about himself when he's at his work because he's really good at his job and he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, like society tells him to be a working person and doing this great job. Anyways, and that's when he starts to get sick. And he's in denial. He doesn't believe that he's sick, or he expects to get better, and the doctors don't really help, but he's still holding out hope. But he just keeps getting sicker and sicker and sicker until he's eventually totally bedridden. And then it's at the very end when he's like, I did everything right in life. Why did this happen to me? Like, I'm going to die now. And he starts to sort of realize that he's not getting out of this. And that's when he sort of has this weird sort of questioning, like, well, I did everything right. I did everything that I was supposed to do. I had lots of friends. Everyone sort of believed that I was doing great, and I had lots of money. So now I'm dying. Like, why am I dying? And he thinks about that phrase, Caius is a man, all men are mortal, therefore Caius must be mortal. And he's like, well, sure, Caius is mortal and going to die, but I'm not Caius, so why am I going to die? And it's sort of, I guess it's looking at the life of someone who sort of had a good life, and so never really considered death, and was never really near death, never really experienced death in their life, and so never really thought of it, and then are suddenly confronted with it, and then sort of the shock and horror of it. I mean, naturally there's going to be a horror associated with death, but it's very much so for this man who's very in denial. And sort of at the end, he starts to think that it was all a lie. He must have lived his life incorrectly. There must have been something he did wrong, and he doesn't quite get it or understand it until he dies in absolute agony, and that's how the book ends. Chronologically, you could go back and sort of, it's kind of secular. You could go back and read the very start of this book and see how everything about his point, like from his point of view, is meaningless when you get to that first chapter, which is post-death, where everyone's just sort of moving on with their life and like, okay, he's dead now. Okay, how much money can I get as a widow? Who's gonna get his job? Yeah, and I think part of the sort of impact of this is how short this book is. Like, this man's entire life is sort of a couple chapters, a handful of pages, and then it's his excruciating death, and it sort of just emphasizes how short life is. Just this book, and it made me think about death, because obviously I'm going to die one day. I don't know if it's next year, or if it's 5 years from now, or if it's 10 years from now, or if it's even, let's be realistic, 50 years from now. Like, I will die. Everyone watching this will one day die. Everyone who's ever read this book has either died or will die. Everyone who will ever read this book will die. It's just something we really don't think about, especially in the modern era, where, like in this book, the guy died and they had his funeral in sort of the room where he was, and they go in and they talk about the smell of the rotting body, the corpse, and then they quickly bury it. But like, we don't even have that now. Like, if someone dies, it's either in a hospital or an ambulance comes and picks up the corpse and takes it away, and then we don't see it again unless there's a funeral where the body has been super preserved so that it looks as if the person is only sleeping. And so we're so very much disconnected from death now. Think of all our, I'm digressing greatly, but just think of all our media, our social media and our news and everything that bombards us daily, the algorithm. Nothing tells us about our death, other than maybe life insurance companies that are like, do you want your celebration of life, they don't use the word funeral now, your celebration of life to be taken care of, then give us money. Anyways, death. This book's all about death. Very painful death. Very short though. You can read it in one sitting. And like I said, it started out like I'm like, oh, this is gonna be funny, but it just turned into just this man who sort of did everything right. His struggle with death. Resistance is impossible, but if only I could understand the reason for this agony. Yet even that is impossible. It would make sense if one could say that I had not lived as I should have, but such an admission is impossible. There is no explanation. Agony, death, why? I don't think there is a reason. There's no... I mean, think of how many people there are. 8 billion people. How many people have already died? Was there a reason that all... however many people that have ever lived, 100 billion people have died? Is there a reason for each and every one? Or is there a reason for any of them? That's Tolstoy.